Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another Wild Eyed podcast. Kevin here with my buddy Chris again. What's going on, Chris? How are you?
Ah, man, just another day in the life trying to survive.
So, going to be doing something kind of interesting today, which is we're going to be talking about pet peeves in gaming. So, I wrote down a bunch before we dive into it. Chris, I don't know how many you got off the top of
Uh,
your head.
I went through. I saw your list because I know you sent me some things that you were into, and I was like, oh, okay, I liked your list. I was like, all those things, I'm on board. One of them I wasn't on board because it personally didn't bother me, but we'll get into that. And then I have five separate things that I know bother me, things that I just don't like seeing. Things that are just either cumbersome or boring or just a pain. You know.
So, and I sent you a list of about, I want to say like five. I actually have more, but to start off, let's see. I think I know which ones you might be iffy on because we touched on some of them the other time. But I'm going to start off with sudden difficulty spikes. And the most recent example of this was I was playing Undertale, which I absolutely loved. For anybody that's not played Undertale, I would recommend it, even if you only get as far as I did,
You
just
know, I
because.
would I would really, I know I know it's available on Switch now, and it's been like one of the things that I've been trying to add onto my playlist. I think the music, what I've heard from it first was the music, and then I've heard great things about it, and so I'm like, oh man, I really got to put it on the list. But
The
go ahead and tell us about your difficulty spike.
Yeah, the music is absolutely phenomenal. I mean,
Great.
it's stunning. It's great. I mean, there's masterpieces. Um, Megalovania is one of the tracks. Snowy, I believe it's just called Snowy, is one of my favorite.
There's a shop track I really like. It's on my playlist. Like, I always love shop music, and so that's got great shop music.
It's really good music, but I got to this boss Undyne, and it's a very different kind of battle system if you haven't played it. And basically, I mean, I was fighting all the enemies. It's not like I wasn't fighting enemies. And actually, this kind of goes hand in hand with another kind of pet peeve that this game was going kind of more for the old school with random battles. Nowadays, I want to see the enemy on screen. I'm playing Persona 5 right now. We talked about Persona 5, me and Chris did between ourselves very briefly the other day, which is fantastic. I'm now like 34 hours into that game. And in all the palaces in that game, I can see the enemies. If I want to avoid the enemies, I can hide, kind of dash past them.
Right.
I'm fighting most of them for the experience. But here's my problem with Undertale. I was pretty much fighting, the enemies. So it's not like I was running away. I was confronting all the enemies, and then I get to this boss, and all of a sudden I keep dying. To me, that's a problem because I was already fighting the enemies. I don't want to spend all my time grinding. If you're
Yeah, it's like it just becomes repetitive. Like I mean it really kind of depends on the battle system. Sometimes the battles can be a lot of fun, so you're like, I don't mind grinding a little bit because I really like fighting or I really like using these skills and whatnot. But like when it becomes like such a huge part of the game, then it's just like it's not fun anymore. It becomes exactly what it is. It becomes grinding, and you're over there just like pig sawing away at this insurmountable wall, and you're like, oh my god, if I have to do this one more minute, I'm just gonna stop playing.
It almost reminds me of I'm getting that weird reverb again. Sorry, guys, but anyway, it reminds me of in the past growing up with video games. I grew up in the 8-bit era, so a little bit after Atari for any older gamers. Um, but with the Nintendo Entertainment System, we had, not just the regular controllers, but there was a controller called the NES Max. And I was like, oh my gosh, this has turbo on it, because that was a thing. And so you could put, turbo on it. And man, I forget exactly what game my brother did this on, but it was something like where he needed a bunch of experience, and it wasn't like menu battles or anything. I think it was more of like a side scroller, but you got experience in the side scroller, which whatever it was. I'd have to go back and ask him, but I remember him actually physically putting like a piece of tape on the controller, like on the A button, so that if the enemies came up, like the character would keep slashing away. And it's like
Right.
that's like what a great definition of grinding right there, because it's like, well, that's what it is. I don't want to do it. I already did this. you're doing basically you're watching reruns basically over and over
Right.
and over again.
Yeah,
Get
no, I mean, like I said, like I said, sometimes some games do it good. I wish I could tell you what game does it good because I really can't think of it. But it becomes like this thing where it's like, oh man, I'm working. I've stopped exploring. I stopped looking for new, cool tasks or things to do. I'm simply clocking in and just mindlessly doing this so that I can just get to this next part. Like it really just kind of stops this forward motion of video games, and that's like the biggest problem with it. I want to continue the story. I want to learn more about the characters. I want to be able to explore new parts of this cavern or world or universe, whatever you want to call it, or whatever is being used. And here I am being stopped, one by this huge difficulty jump, which makes me feel like, is there something I'm missing? Is there an item I'm supposed to get? Like, am I just a bad player? And it's been on like tutorial level this entire time, and they're like, okay, welcome to the real game. And it's like, well, no, it's like, what's going on here? Like, I'm like 10 hours into this game, and I've been doing pretty well. A little struggle here or there, which seems right. Yeah, okay, I fought this last boss, and he was hard, but if I died or if I messed up, I knew. I was like, okay, I know what I did wrong there. I swerved when I should have jumped or what have you. But some games are just like, you just walk in, just some guy, punch you in the stomach several times and be like, well, it's over. And I'm like, well, what did I miss? Did I find myself like, did I, you backtrack and you're like, oh my God, did I forget something? Did I not forget something? And then you just realize the game just said, yeah, no, we've been at level 7 this entire time. Welcome to 27, and you got to get there. And I'm like, oh God, and then it becomes clocking in. Then it's like I'm not even playing this game anymore. I'm telling my friends, yeah, I haven't gotten past that. Yeah, I got to do like 10 more hours of grinding so I can at least get to this next part. And then you start thinking, well, if this is where I am now, like I can only imagine what they want to do. That happened in Final Fantasy 12. Final Fantasy 12, there was I was progressing pretty well, and I really did enjoy the game. I was having a good time, and then I got to this one dungeon, and it was like I couldn't even get past some of the enemies. I mean, like literally outside the dungeon, I'm doing fine, and then inside the dungeon, I'm not even at the boss yet. The first guy I run into was just like knocking my team out. I'm like, what is going on here?
So you said something in there, forward motion. I mean, I think you said it, but you're talking about momentum. It's like at a certain point, should I spend my entire Saturday playing the same battle over and over and over again, or go on to a different game or go outside or, hang out with your family or your girlfriend or, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll usually if it gets that bad, I'll usually like give it a. I'm like, you know what? If the story is good enough and I really want to know what's going on, I'll give it a few hours. I'll be like, look, I'll just go in here, I'll fight a few guys, and I think my rule is if I hit a boss and I'm struggling, I'm like, okay, let me get up 3 levels. I was like, that's my cue. I was like, let me get up 3 levels, and if I get up 3 levels and I'm still struggling, I'm like, okay, now I know that this game is just trying to be mean to me, and I probably will I'll stop playing. I might come back in a few months, but I'll probably stop playing.
And that's the thing, like, being mean to you, it's like it almost feels like a form of punishment because so I was introduced to Undertale at my brother's, I believe, on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah, it was Thanksgiving, and having such a blast. And there's a lot of humor in the game, and like we said, the music is amazing. But when I came back to my place and I bought it on my Switch and I'm playing, and then got a little further in the game, and then all of a sudden get to this boss, and it's like, what am I missing? What did I do wrong? I was fighting all the enemies. It's like, oh no, you have to go back now because we're gonna spike this boss's level up by 20 levels, and it's like, just no, leave me alone.
And see that's my thing I was talking about before. It's like, what did I do wrong? And just like
Right.
it immediately makes you think there's something that I missed. There's something that I didn't do because I shouldn't be struggling this much. I shouldn't be, like I said, there should be difficulty, there should be challenge, but I shouldn't be like walking up to somebody and they're like, yeah, man, I'm the final boss. Well, I'm not the final boss, but I'm the final boss right now. And I'm like, well, why is that? Like, is there something that I didn't level up properly? Is there something in this dungeon? Is there an item? That's usually what I think. I'm like, is there an item or a skill that I should have now that I don't have? Because I feel like I'm completely playing a different game. This isn't the same game I was playing before. You know?
Now, both me and Chris, I know we both have love for RPGs. They've certainly changed over the years. You've mentioned Final Fantasy. Obviously, we're just talking about Undertale. I'm playing Persona 5 Royal right now. Uh,
Royale.
yeah, right. For any double royale with cheese. For any RPG lovers out there who have not tried Persona and who also love like choose your own adventure, visual novel type stuff, it's a hybrid of the two, and it's freaking awesome. But anyway, what are your thoughts on random battles? Because this is something that has and has not changed over the years.
Um,
I guess,
so
but
like, and we're talking about like, there's nobody on the field, and then you walk into something like,
so example for me when Final Fantasy 6 came out, I believe I want to say 12 when Final Fantasy 6 came out, or Final Fantasy 3 here in the States, and had an absolute blast playing that game. Because I was actually very sick at the time that game came out. So that game was basically my solace, my comfort during that week. Imagine being 12 years old and being told you can't eat pizza for a year. That was part of it. But anyway, so like no.
yeah,
So Final Fantasy 6, and I'm playing it, or Final Fantasy 3, I'm playing it, and there's no. I didn't mind it as much back then, I don't think, but there's no enemies on the screen. You're walking around the world map, and all of a sudden, screen flash, and then you go into a battle. Undertale does that as well. Chrono Trigger does not do that. More recent games, Persona 5, you can see the enemies on screen. Dragon Quest 11, you can see them on screen. The Xenoblade games, you can see them on screen. So as much as I had trouble with Xenoblade 2, which I might give that game a new game plus go, just because it's like the whole learning curve of that game to me is the entire game, which was like 60 hours. So if you guys haven't seen, I put up basically a rant video on the battle system of that. But yeah, so any thoughts on random battles for you?
so I mean, obviously, I love the biggest problem with any random battles is how long does it take to get in and out of the battle? Like that's a huge part of the whole process. You know, there's some games where it's like every time I get into a random battle, we got to do 16 screen zooms and zooms out. And I think, I think Final Fantasy VIII does it the worst. You know, like as far as random battles, there's so much to even start the battle, and it becomes a problem like when you get to fight like a mouse. You know, you're like, oh, I know that this mouse is going to take me one slash. I don't have to use any skills. I don't have to use any magic. It's just that weak, and it takes 15 seconds to get into the battle, and it takes 20 seconds to get out of it, and it's a pain. There's a lot of games that do it very well. Chrono Trigger does it well. The Final Fantasy Crisis Core and Crisis Core Reunion do it well. You get into battle fast, you get out of battle fast too. So with random battles, if you it doesn't matter if you see the enemy or don't see the enemy. If it takes forever for it to start, that's a problem. You know. So if it does a well job of starting and ending, then I mean it's kind of like a double-edged sword. You know, if you see the enemies, obviously you have this advantage to be like, well, if I don't want to fight this guy, then I'm just going to go ahead and go around him. And I guess it works in the sense that, you know, if you see some weaker enemies, that's pretty cool. You're like, oh, I don't need to fight this enemy that's going to give me 25 XP. I'm just going to go ahead and go around them and whatnot. But then it kind of gives you that ability to be like, well, I don't feel like fighting anybody. You know, like sometimes you'll just get somewhere and you're like, well, if I don't have to fight anybody, I'll just go around them. And the problem with that is that sometimes you do have to fight. You only get stronger when you fight. So I mean, it becomes a player thing. Personally, me, I love when you see the enemy. It's really nice because then I can kind of gauge what I want to do. I'm like, oh, let's say it's a mouse. I don't want to fight a mouse. You know, the mouse isn't going to give me enough XP to do anything worthwhile. All I'm going to do is either mess up the perfect health and perfect MP that I have right now, or I'm going to use an item that I really don't need to use, or something stupid. But then when I do see the bigger enemies, I'm like, okay, this is a battle that I should fight. But even me, I'll be like, ooh, I really don't want to fight that one. Maybe I'll just scoop around it. And so the advantage with the not seeing them is that you're just kind of going through and you're running through the battle, so you're kind of forced to fight these battles, good and bad. Because if you fight like if I run into an enemy that's really going to give me some experience, then it's like, okay, great. I might have avoided this guy because I want to continue the story, but now here I am, and it's a tough battle. Well, yeah, I'll fight it, but then once again, double-edged sword. If I keep running into this maze and it's a mouse and another mouse and another mouse and another mouse, I'm like, oh my god, enough with these mouses. I'm done. Or whatever low grade enemy that these games have. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to fight this guy. Like when I was level 1, yeah, sure, but I'm level 27. I think games should find a nice hybrid where maybe at a certain level they just stop showing you a certain type of enemy. I don't know if any game does that, and I'm pretty sure some game does that, but that would if you want people to fight everybody or level up, and you don't want to show the enemies and you don't want people to escape, you really should look at the level cap of the player and be like, well, obviously they're level 27, so let's just toss them level 24 and level 25 enemies, or level 27, level 28 enemies, because it's 3 against 1 or 3, whatever, So I like them. I would always prefer to see the enemy because I don't know of any games personally that look at the level cap and base the enemies in the area based on my level. But like I said, sometimes I know me, I'll just be like, I don't want to fight that big guy. I don't want to do that. And then I get to a boss and he's just wrecking me. He's just over here giving me the business, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to go back here and try this again. Well, to the old whiteboard, right?
And you said something in there, which was you get stronger when you fight. And what a valuable life lesson video games have taught us, right? Because I mean, it's like, no, seriously, you don't learn anything, you don't get any experience if you see something, you see that, oof, I don't want to do that, and then you're just non-confrontational. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're
No, I would use that. It's pretty non-confrontational. I just like you just like I said, it just the game's got to do a good job of making me want to fight somebody. That's huge, and I think a lot of it has to do with if it's going to be a randomized battle, how fast you get into the battle, how fast you can get out of it, and then how much fun it is. Like Persona 5, I love the battle system in Persona 5. I really do. It's fun, it's chaotic, and it really doesn't take too long to get in and out of it. I think other games have done it better, but it's got a nice system.
So what's interesting, for people that have played Persona 5, I am now in the fourth palace, which is basically a pyramid type setting.
Okay, that one's good. The music in that one is great.
Yeah. It's I was a little intimidated first because it's sort of like a underground labyrinth at first in the first little section. I'm like, oh, thank God, that's not how the entire thing is going to be set up. And I'm just now learning in the fourth palace that you can command the other characters, because I didn't, I guess, review enough or whatever. You can actually command the other characters to act freely. And this is something that has become more prevalent in other RPGs. Dragon Quest XI does it. And what's also interesting is in Dragon Quest XI, you can set battle speed. And so when I was playing, for those of you who have seen my Dragon Quest XI video, you can set, or have played it yourself, probably know you can set battle speed to ultra fast, which I love. So you set all your characters to, act a certain way or whatever. You have your healer heal, or I forgot exactly what the command was, but like do as much as you possibly can, like doesn't matter how much, MP or whatever you use. I think I had most of my characters set to that. I mean, I defeated bosses on basically going into a boss and literally leaving the room. And then I just in the other room took a phone call or whatever it was. And 5 minutes later, I hear the tone that like, oh, I beat the boss. Didn't you? So that was fine by me. But moving on from, that was also interesting in Dragon Quest XI, is that when you were out to sea, there were random battles, but when you were on land, you could see the monsters. So that was an interesting hybrid. But moving on from RPGs for now, anyway. This one, another one that grinds my gears at least. Tap a button as fast as you can, and I'll give you. Me and Chris did an audio podcast a while ago where we were talking about Resident Evil 4, so I'll use that as my example. I love that game to death. I will absolutely play the remake when it comes out. I have played that game, sadly, about 16 times, and it'll be 17 when the remake comes out. That's not an exaggeration. I love that game that much. But what I didn't love in that game was when I had to, tap A as fast as you can. And I want to say the first example was, I forgot if it was the Gigante or the Del Lago. For the Del Lago, which is the boss in the lake, you beat the boss, and spoiler alert, the game's been out for years and years now. So since the game,
how dare you? How dare you tell people?
Right? And the remake's going to change stuff. We've seen that it's changing stuff. I don't like that. They already showed this in the trailers, but I don't like that they killed the dog. You can't save the dog in the beginning.
That's sad. I always love saving the dog. I do it every time.
Yeah, you got to save the dog. And the iconic, hey, it's that dog line. And then he takes care of the distracting the Gigante. It's awesome. But the Del Lago, you think you're done with the boss, and then the rope or the anchor gets caught on Leon's ankle, and all of a sudden it says, cut, A, with the arrow down, meaning tap as fast as you can. Now, I didn't mind this as much in the 90s, like say Mortal Kombat, test your might, press A as fast as you can type of thing. I didn't mind it as much in that era.
Right.
But nowadays, maybe because I'm older and I do have shoulder issues also, I've had surgery on this side, actually. Don't tell me to press a button as fast as I can. That's
don't you dare do that to me.
You've hurt me, Capcom.
I don't know. I get what you're saying. I don't know. It's never really bothered me per se. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll do it. I don't know what it's kind of like a quick, easy quick time event. Sometimes they're like, hit this button, and then hit this button, hit this button. And to be honest, I kind of see it as both the same thing. I guess I think it could be done pretty good, because sometimes prime example, I'm doing a run through now, a second run through of Star Wars Jedi: The Fallen Order. Great. And there's a few times where you're lightsaber battling somebody, and then you guys your blades will combine, and you'll have to hit and so it kind of creates this struggle, you're really putting into it. So I kind of like it for that aspect. I don't know. It never really bothered me. I mean, I can, like I said, I can see well, I got to do this. I've already done all this work. Let the game do it. I hit a button. It's kind of like raising yourself up on an elevator. I should be able to hit a button. You should be able to do it. But I don't know. I guess it's never really bothered me, because it's just kind of like, it's a small little struggle. I got it. That's how my brain puts together. It's just kind of like a little extra step to kind of create a connection between you, the character, and the situation. Like I said, the prime example is the lightsaber battle. Sometimes when both of our sabers connect, and then we're doing this, and I'm like, I'm stronger than you. And then when you get it, you're like, yeah, now I'm gonna mess this guy up. That's me. I don't know.
So I can respect that. I'm thinking about when the Wii came out, because talking about Resident Evil 4, there are so many different versions of it, and now there's going to be yet another one with the remake on the way. Mm-hmm. But when the Wii version came out, which I love for the infrared motion control, just as far as being able to point the gun on screen, which made aiming so much easier, which was great. Well, it was now you had the Wii Waggle when you had to sprint or something like that. So instead of press A as fast as you can, now wave around your remote like an idiot for 30 seconds. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to
the Wii mode was just a travesty. Other than Wii Sports, loved it for Wii Sports. But
I'm going to take issue with that statement, because there are exceptions. Number one, for anybody that has not played the Godfather Black Hand Edition on Wii, that is one of the best motion control experiences.
Okay.
Not the best one I had on the Wii. unfortunately, I didn't hear or see a lot about it back then. The last time I saw it in a store, it was like $3. I'm
Like a
playing
whole week?
on the Godfather, the game, not
Oh, the
the
game. I was like a week for $3. Damn.
no. Yeah, if you don't have a Wii and you see it for $3, probably pick one up. That's a steal for sure. But the Godfather was great. Yeah, Wii Sports, of course, I'll give you that. Wii Sports Resort with the forgot what they called it, but the lightsaber
Yeah,
types.
the little kendo thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
whatever that
that
was.
was great.
And then The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, because I never played the GameCube version. So I had it on Wii, and the fishing game in Twilight Princess worked very well as far as reeling.
Okay.
It wasn't much. It was just like I got my little projector remote here, but like reel or cast rather, and then reel with the nunchuck, whatever. It worked fine.
Yeah.
Worked.
I think, like I said, there are some exceptions, but I still think that it was just, every developer, every game company does something that someone's got to be the pioneer, and the pioneer is usually the one that kind of has the struggle, and then someone comes along and they're like, I'm going to fix it. And I think the Wiimote was, walked so many other motion controllers could run, but for me, Wii Sports. It was for me. I was like, this works. Then they try to do it for so many other games, and it just didn't. And I was like, I can't.
And then so they gave up, and this is I love that this came up because I realized this is a pet peeve of mine, is the whole Wii Waggle phase. Eventually, I feel like after Wii Sports, after The Godfather, I want to say Twilight Princess was actually the last GameCube game, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, but I think it was. And other than that, it's like developers just were like, well, it's Wii, what should we do? Have them, shake the controller around like an idiot. So much so that check out the SNL sketch on Wii Waggle and laugh. But we can move on from that. I feel like you said, there's a lot of like, oh, there's exceptions to the rule type of thing for a lot of different things. This is one that I know we disagree on already. So cel shading has become more and more, especially on Switch. I feel like, especially Switch exclusive games. If you go on the eShop, there are rather a lot of visual novel type games.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, which I did play Life is Strange not long ago, which is kind of choose your own adventure. That
I enjoyed my playthrough. I really did.
True Colors.
I didn't play True Colors. I just played the first version of it. I never picked it back up.
So
I probably should.
So my only experience with it is True Colors on the Switch. Really interesting game, basically about this girl who's an empath who can see other people's emotion, like if they're if they have or if they're afraid, whatever emotion they're experiencing, you basically press a button or whatever, and you can see like what they're feeling. It's really kind of an interesting dynamic, to say the least, and I enjoyed my playthrough of that. It gets pretty dark and heavy at times, but sticking on cel shading, a lot of the RPGs. So we talked about Astral Chain already, the Xenoblade Chronicles games, which I didn't mind so much in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, especially because that game was very refined, especially after how much filler 2 had in it. And I know the remake of the first game on Switch kind of redid the original's graphics more in line with the cel shading aspect. Persona 5 Royale, like I said, I keep saying Royale, I feel like, so I'm going to keep
Royale.
Persona 5 Royale. I love the game so much. Like, I cannot complain about too many things in this game at all.
But that cel shading is messing up America.
It really is. Yeah. No, the cel shading, I don't mind it everywhere, but I feel like maybe it's just because I've played through Xenoblade Chronicles 3 recently, and like I felt the main characters in that game had a very refined look to them with the cel shading, whereas the character models in Persona 5, for me, for some reason, they just look a little bit lesser. Okay. I don't exactly know what it is. I know you're more of an anime guy. I'm somewhat of an anime guy, but not really. If somebody asked me on the street, I'd say no, not really.
Okay.
So for anybody that's into anime, I totally get why you would love cell shading, because that basically goes hand in hand with anime. Wind Waker, love that game. That's timeless to me. So like I said, exception to the rule. But thoughts on cell shading?
I think that there was a time that, like, I don't know if anyone know this game, but like a real long time ago, there was this PlayStation 2 game called Auto Modelista. It was a racing game, and it was a cell shaded racing game, and the game was okay. I don't think there's anything amazing about the game. I thought it was a pretty much a run of the mill racing game, maybe a little bit less. And I think that maybe then around that time, cell shading had just like started, and I didn't think people kind of figured it out, or they didn't know how to use it properly, or it was just like a fad. But I think now it colors pop so much more better, like so much better on cell shading. Nothing wrong with the realistic feel or whatever, but it just kind of gives you like this really cool aesthetic. And I love the way it looks. I love the way that characters can like pull off these like insane designs, insane, designs as far as what they're wearing, how enemies look, how blood and explosion, like blood is just bright red, and just like, oh, this is so great. I don't know, I love colors. Like I really do. And the more vibrant they can be, the more full they can be. I'm all for it. And so you kind of don't get that in a more realistic feel game. I mean, I don't hate realistic feel games. I think they're great as well too. But it's just like it's so aesthetically pleasing. Like that. This is how I see it. It's like, oh, it's so aesthetically pleasing, and all these colors pop, and usually, don't quote me, but usually sometimes the frame rates are just a little bit, chef's kiss, a little bit better, because they're not like trying to run too much processing power. You really get these, you really can go, really big with like facial emotions. Like, since it's cell shaded, it's a little bit more cartoony. And I know that some people don't like that, but like, and it's what I like anime about. It's like, like because it's so animated, and so like these colors are so pop, you can really kind of step out of what's like normal or what's usual. I mean, you take something as, take something as serious as The Last of Us, right? And you write down or Ellie or Joel's face, and there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can really, and as a human, you can see emotion, but I mean, you can take that same scene, put it in cell shading, you can really kind of play with how someone's face looks or how they will express something, and it's just pops. I'm a fan. I don't think it's for everybody, but I'm a fan.
What's really interesting about that too is that I believe that was kind of the motivation for Wind Waker, is to show how expressive Link could be with all those different
Yeah,
facial. And I realized too that in talking about all of this, and I stand by this, I'm realizing that I've said that this is my favorite game of all time to date, anyway, as of this video, until Tears of the Kingdom comes out, Breath of the Wild. And I'm realizing that that's, I believe, cell shading. So
yeah, no,
there's always an exception.
there's always exceptions, and that's why, personally, that's why I like cell shading. I love the vibrant colors. I love what you can do. I love how you can figure out designs and enemies, and you can really make enemies look kind of dark and creepy looking. And like I said, it's not that you can't do that in realistic games, but you can really push the boundaries of how someone looks, of how someone expresses something, about how actions are exposed or expressed. Something as simple as like using a sword and chopping someone. I mean, like the lights that come off it, the sparks, the blood, the way things rip open. It's just like, oh, you can really go beyond the boundary and really kind of like get deep into the color. And where with more realistic games, you can still do that, but it kind of goes for that gore effect. Kind of like, ooh, it's gonna be gory, and this is just like it's gonna explode like pop art.
Although, if you've beaten Wind Waker, every time I play through Wind Waker at the very end, I always go fatality. It gets shockingly violent for a split second. And if they ever remake that game, I want tons of blood. No, just all right. So moving on from cell shading, going to talk a little bit about filler. We were just talking briefly. We had a little break there. Me and Chris were just talking about Dark Souls also. So another pet peeve of like just, running out of patience with games. I'm not going to try it. Chris, you were talking about Bloodborne a little bit.
7 hours. I played that game for 7 full hours. And I was like, this, I don't know why you want to do this. It's kind of like you start the game off and they're like, this is how you roll. This is how you dodge. Okay, now go fight God. Go fight him right now. I'm like, wait, now? And then if you beat God, that before he dies, he's like, yeah, I got 10 million older siblings, and they're just hanging around. And I'm like, well, why would I want to do that? Why can't I just be, why can't I start off with like a crook, and then move up,
Well, it's interesting. Sort of like I'm getting that reverb again, so apologies. I'm working on that. But anyway, it's kind of like in Breath of the Wild's case, where it's like, oh, you can actually go and fight Calamity Ganon.
Yeah, yeah, if you want to. Hey, there's the door.
Yeah, but anyway, so filler, pet peeve for me, filler, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. If you haven't checked out my rant video, check out my rant video on Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think I mentioned earlier, I would be inclined to do a new game plus on it just because I went through the 60 hours the first time where I finally learned how to actually play the game, because it just insists on telling you things. I mean, literally up until the last boss, it's pretty much telling you like, oh, did you know you can also do that? It's like, wait, I'm about to fight the last boss and you're telling me this now? Like, get it over with. And like the first, I guess it depends on the game length. For me, it's right. If it's a 10-hour game, get it over with in like 20 to 30 minutes if you can. Persona 5 I read is like, and based on my experience, I'm in the fourth palace. I'm 35 hours into the game, I think.
Okay.
It'll be 100 hours by the time I'm done with the game, from what I'm reading, and that's like a non-completionist style, which I'm not a completionist. And I think it's told me what it needs to tell me. So, which I can deal with, like 10 to 20 hours in for a 100-hour game. Xenoblade 2 is a 60-hour game, but you're literally telling me things. I had to go back because it's been a minute and watch my own video, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. They did tell me things even at the 50-hour mark. And I believe, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say you're in that last area with the final boss, and like an hour beforehand, it's like, hey, here's this new thing.
Right.
What? No, leave me alone at this point. And by the way, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, phenomenal. They basically refined everything to me that Xenoblade 2 did wrong. So props to Monolith Soft for listening to the fans. I will say I like the story better in 2. Character is more memorable for me. For any fans of anime, though, 3 is going to be right up your alley because 3 is weird.
Okay.
It's weird. And I think when somebody says anime, I think weird. That's not in a bad way, by the way. It's just like, come on, I've seen
for shame.
So moving on from, well, any filler come to you at all? Agree, disagree, thoughts?
So just to go on like an anime aspect of it real quick, I personally am not a fan of filler. Is there good filler? Of course there is. But I mean, like, give me the canon. Give me what's I'm supposed to know. Tell the story that you want to tell. Don't tell me like 30 minutes. Don't tell me like, oh, this game's a million hours, but like, it's really only 20 because everything else is like fetch quests and do this and do that. And there's this other guy and we're going to learn everything about him, but he doesn't really matter at all because it's silly. We just wanted to make you run around for 3 hours to talk to some guy who probably knows something about the thing you're looking for and find out that he doesn't. That's a big pet peeve. They're like, if you're playing like a horror game, they're like, John knows more about the cavern, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll go talk to John. And you go talk to John, and John's like, I think I know what's going on. Go talk to this guy and get this item for me. Then you go and do this sometimes difficult, sometimes intermediate task that involves doing a whole bunch of dumb stuff. And then you give him the things, and then he's like, actually, I was thinking it was another cavern. Sorry, buddy. And I'm like, well, why would you do that to me? Why would this is fun? I didn't enjoy this at all. Tell me help me either build on the story or make it like an interesting side quest. Don't tell me that this is something that's useful and then it's not. You know, that personally, if you could just give me the meat and taters, I mean, like, it's okay if you want to give me an appetizer and then a drink, but sometimes they want to give you a whole smorgasbord of a whole bunch of nonsense that doesn't even taste good, that just kind of fills up the plate so the plate doesn't look empty. If the plate looks empty, don't make it look empty. Give me a bigger steak. Give me bigger potatoes. Don't give me a little mini steak and a little bit of potatoes and then put a whole bunch of sauce and edible like sheets of something. I don't know, like an edible piece of paper. You know how they like to puff up plates. They're like, oh, this is our short ribs, and it'll be like two ribs and a little bit of sauce, and there's a whole bunch of things around the plate that I'm not gonna eat. Yeah, sure. Yes, it looks nice. The plate looks beautiful. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you that it doesn't, but I really would appreciate just more ribs and more taters. Thank you.
What's taters? What's taters, master?
I
I watched Lord of the Rings not too long ago. Yeah, if the plate, yeah, give me a bigger steak for sure. So this is funny. I was at a birthday party years ago, and I won't name the name of this restaurant, but we were at a Chinese restaurant. Everything was delicious. And then there was, it was like a private birthday party, and then there were desserts ordered for everybody. And these desserts were like on a rectangular plate, and it was like, they advertised it as molten chocolate lava cake. This thing looked like a mini Reese's. He's drizzled on it with like the drizzle going across the plate. And I wish I was exaggerating. I am not
I don't
exaggerating.
think you are. I think you're telling the truth. And I think a lot of games do that.
I'm not going to kid you. It tasted good. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm going to, I got to write to my parents about this.
Right.
It tasted good. Do I remember what it tasted like? No. What I mostly remember is how stupid it looked, relative to the big plate. But you mentioned something interesting too, which was good filler. And a couple things come to mind. So open world gaming. So Breath of the Wild, which I think I've said before, I'm not impressed with the story because the story already happened. The war happened. Like Zelda's fighting Ganon, and Link's gonna, go around and be like, "No, I'm gonna collect swords and stuff. You go do your thing with Ganon over there. While I spend, 200."
You keep him at bay. I'm gonna go and explore the world a little bit.
Right, exactly. 60 hours later, I went to my first divine beast. I'm like, all right, Princess Zelda. While you're dealing with that for literal days on end, I'm gonna spend my time cooking. What combinations can I come up with?
I'm gonna find the perfect beef. Okay, I know that you're fighting for our freedom right now and our lives, but I gotta saute this the right way.
But this is prime organic, and if I put, I forgot what the stamina mushrooms and all that were called.
Yeah.
But
No, I did like. Side note: the cooking system in Breath of the Wild was fun. I'm not gonna say
it was fun. It was fun, and then it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a late bloomer just because I don't know. Maybe like I said, with patience running out or whatever, I sometimes skip over a little mini instruction or hit A when I don't mean to. I'm like, oh, I missed that or whatever it was, and I'm like, oh, I can skip the cooking animation.
Yes, you can.
That's helpful to know. All right, so moving on. Oh, so good filler, Breath of the Wild. Like I said, not impressed with story because it kind of already happened. Which was cool for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity to kind of show you some stuff of what was going on. If that's considered canon, I believe it is. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But other than that, I think the Grand Theft Auto games are a great example. Grand Theft Auto 5, masterpiece in my book, but tons and tons of filler. And I would say I liked the story. I really liked the characters in that game. I thought Michael was awesome for any GTA 5 fans. I know people love Trevor. I thought he was actually one noted. Stephen Ogg, great job voice acting and everything.
Yeah.
Cool appearance on, what was it, Breaking Bad? Or not Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. But
yeah, no, I think Rockstar does filler great. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2, I mean, there's so much to do, just random characters in the wild, and they even have like their own little cutscenes and stories, and that filler builds the world. It kind of creates the world that you're living in. You're like, okay, this isn't just yes, it's a random person in the woods who got trapped by a bear trap, and you help him, and it turns out that he's like keeping a woman under like under duress and keeping her kidnapped, and you go save her and bring her back to the mayor who or the guy in the city who's been missing her. Like, I mean, all that just kind of builds the world a little bit. It's interesting. It's fun. It's not just like trash for trash sake.
It's yeah, it's basically it's immersion and freedom, I think. So I have not played Red Dead 2. I have played Red Dead 1.
Both
But
great.
yeah,
Both great.
Rockstar, like, just, I guess, sticking with GTA 5, since we both play that one, at least, you can literally go play, I forgot if it's 18 holes, but you can literally go play a 9-hole golf course. You can call up one of your teammates and be like, hey, do you want to go golfing, or go play tennis for a little bit? Or I think GTA 4 had pool. I forgot if 5 did or not. But just all these different activities that were that fleshed out that you could do were just, I mean, the freedom that you had just really immerses you in the game. And I think the same thing with Breath of the Wild is, you're going one direction for miles and miles, and all of a sudden you see that flying dragon off in the distance, and you're like, what is that? Or you see, uh the mountain with what I forget what the creature was called, but you see that mountain for the first time in that beam of light, and you're like, what is that, when you were going a completely different
Mm-hmm.
direction. So there is absolutely good filler. Like you said, Rockstar is
A rock star.
I was trying to avoid that. um, anyway, moving on from that. So next one, balancing. We talked about motion control a little bit, but this is one for me. It's become less of a thing nowadays because people are getting away from motion control, I believe, including Nintendo themselves. They're like, yeah, you can do it with Switch, but if you want, here's a bunch of extra standard Pro controllers, and even the dock itself comes with I forget what they call the thing, but it's like, yeah, just take the Joy-Cons, snap them on,
Yeah.
and you got your little blocky controller there. It's a weird looking controller, but hey, it's more of a standard controller. But
Yeah.
balancing motion control and standard control. So I talked a little bit up on the channel about Immortals Phoenix Rising, which I actually did stop playing. Unfortunately, I got to a part in one of these vaults where it was just like, you got to control these arrows, and it's becomes difficult doing it with a standard controller. But I don't want to use motion control.
Right.
Trying to use the motion control, it's like I don't want to go back and forth between one and the other. Just let me stick with standard control. And if you're going to have both options, they both need to be fluid. They need to be interchangeable.
Yeah. You should be able to turn it on and off if you need to.
Well, yeah, that, and what I'm saying is, like, it can't be more difficult one way than the other. If you have both
Okay.
options,
Yeah. Yeah.
make it as efficient as possible in both, equally efficient, I guess is what I'm saying. Moving on from that, we already kind of talked about
Yeah.
a bunch. Collect-o-Thons.
Ah, man. Terrible. Terrible.
Any
Terrible.
comes one in particular comes to mind, but I'm going to ask you first. Anything come to mind?
So like that I love Final Fantasy VII, and I really did enjoy the remake. I thought the remake was great. There's one part in the game. There's a dungeon that you play, and I'll call it a dungeon for all intended purposes, or an area. There's an area you play, and you're on top of you're on the bottom of the top of the plates, and you got to go through all these winding things and collect this key and that key, and the area itself is not huge. The area itself is pretty moderate. And it's just like, get this thing, unlock this thing, do this thing, and do it over here. And now that you unlock this, now you got a whole other set of things you need to lock. So you need to go over here and do this and turn this off and collect this and do that. And it's like, oh, just just throw me a boss already. Like, why do I have to collect a million and one things, especially when it's required? Like, I can understand if it's like a side quest and you can just walk away from it. You're like, and I usually do. Like, if I have to collect more than four things and they're not close to each other, I'm like, well, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this. But a lot of times, some games will be like, yeah, you need to collect like 30 items. And then and it's not really 30 items. That's how they get you. It's 5 items to unlock another thing that's another 5 items to unlock another thing that's 7 items. And it's like difficulty. We made the game difficult and long for you by making you go around and collecting all this dumb things that don't really matter and don't really do anything. And it's just like, ugh, you know?
So do you know what a Russian doll is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like that effect of like, it layers, and there's like an onion. It's layers and layers and layers, and it's too much at a certain point. For me, Nintendo 64, I remember getting Donkey Kong 64 as a Christmas gift one year. And
be careful now. Be careful what you say now.
Rareware is a fantastic company. They have so many
is.
great games. Donkey Kong Country, the Diddy's Conquest, I believe the second one was called, with amazing music in that one. They both had great music. The second one had phenomenal music in my book. Three, I don't think I ever beat three. Three was still fun. I don't think as good as the first two. Still great. Killer Instinct, 64, GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Perfect Dark.
You're building it up. You're building it up.
Banjo-Kazooie. But then I suppose two games. Donkey Kong 64 was fun, but there was so much in it that it's like every single level. So I believe you had 5 characters. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. Of course, right. I had Kong, Diddy Kong, Trixie Kong, I want to say. There was Lanky Kong, and then there's the chunky guy who I forgot.
Yeah, isn't there like a Diddy Kong rap or something like that?
There's a Donkey Kong rap in the beginning of the game.
Thank you.
I remember first playing that game and being confused, and my confusion came from, why am I not having fun? So initially, I've actually played that game a couple of times, but there is just so much to collect. It's like every single Kong has like, I think Trixie Kong has like, purple bananas, and Diddy Kong has red bananas. Donkey Kong can only collect the yellow bananas. One of them, Lanky, I think, can only collect green bananas. And it was just like, this is too much. And then Banjo-Tooie, I'm not sure if it did it I don't think it did it as badly as Donkey Kong 64 did, in my personal opinion, but it was just so much bigger, and sometimes bigger is not always necessarily better.
It's true. It's true.
So
I was just messing with you. I know people keep, Donkey Kong's special place in their heart. So, like it's, when you I'm like, be careful now, people listen. People
some people are getting triggered, whatever, it's fine. People are adding me, as the kids say these days.
They're already they're like, just like, how could Kevin say that about our savior Donkey Kong?
Well, look, I got plenty of hate for my video that's playing in the background there, my Super Metroid versus Dread video. But thank you if you watched it. In any case, yeah. So I could not go back and play Donkey Kong 64 these days. I played Returns on Wii. I actually didn't like Returns on Wii. For me, I forget exactly why. I don't know if it was because of, like, I believe it was Retro Studios, and it was like one of those difficulty spike things when it's like, not necessarily with the bosses per se, but just like the game in general. Itself, yeah, sort of like, going from Mario 64 to Mario Galaxy. That's not a smooth transition. Like they upped the difficulty there. Banjo-Kazooie to me was a masterpiece. Ironically, I tried it recently on Switch Online, and I'm like, man, this game is old.
Oh, I mean, there's some games that, like, you know what it is? It's Banjo-Kazooie was the pioneer. They're like, we are the game about collecting things. This game's about collecting things. And I think at the time, nobody had played a game about collecting things. It was the first game where it's like, yeah, just kind of go around and grab things and have fun. And it's great. People were like, I never played anything like this in my life. This is great. And then as people started realizing, like, oh, we can do this in other games, then it becomes a trope. And then we're just like, ugh. And then at first it wasn't a trope, and now it is. This collecting aspect of video games. Like, oh, we're gonna add this level of difficulty or longevity by having you collect a whole bunch of nonsensical things to move your forward progress, right? And so you go back to playing Banjo-Kazooie, which is like the original, collecting. You're like, oh my god! Not only is this a trope, this is the first time they've done it. And so I don't think it's a game that. I mean, I'm not saying it's a terrible game, and I'm pretty sure people probably still have a special place in their heart. But like, I don't think it's a game that holds up. You know?
Yeah, no, that's actually the thing, because for a minute there, I was thinking about actually doing a Super Mario 64 versus Banjo-Kazooie video, and I thought, man, it'll be so great to go back and play Banjo-Kazooie. And I'm going to actually sum this up in a sentence, and this is why I decided against it. For some odd reason, first of all, the music in both games is fantastic. I believe Grant Kirkhope is the composer that did Banjo-Kazooie, I want to say. And it's the music in that game is so good and memorable for me. But there's something about it now that just feels like, and I guess what it is now is could be considered a retro game. And yeah, to me, I feel like it has not aged well. And I did play Mario 64 within the last 2 years, I think. And for some odd reason, I feel that holds up better. Maybe part of that is nostalgia. And it was one of those
I think it's
experiences
just like I
I
think
mean,
that it's just like like every Mario game is pretty much similar. I mean, obviously there's things that they do to kind of like bring it into the new age or make it more fun and exciting for whatever odd reason. But I mean, like at the heart, Mario is a guy that jumps around and stomps on things and collects mushrooms. You know, and you never. It's not a trope. It's the game. You know, I feel like Banjo Kazooie is a little bit different because like the game is collecting things, but now we use collecting things in every video game. It's not specific to Banjo Kazooie. Like now it's just something that games do. They're like go and collect all these things. And so it becomes like this task now. And then now you play a game that's a task. Like it's not like a part of the game anymore. The game itself is a task. And so with Mario, it's like the game is jumping around and stomping on people's heads. Yeah, you might jump to planet to planet. You might go ahead and clean up an environment area. You might go ahead and collect ghosts. But at its core, this game is a platform, and that's the game. And platforming is just a thing in the game. It's not a trope. It's usually if it's a platformer, that's what it is. We run and jump. What are you gonna do? Run and jump.
okay, so I have a few more.
Please.
Um, Going back to Zelda, Ocarina of Time, I think will forever remain before people start hating me.
Oh, and you just touching everything today. You're like Ocarina of Time. People
First
like
of all,
wait a minute.
Donkey Kong, Zelda, Mario. Let me just name all the popular franchises.
And then let me tell you that I don't like them.
Yeah. Right. No, Zelda's one of my favorite franchises of all time. Ocarina of Time. Now, this might get me hate. I think Twilight Princess might actually be better than Ocarina of Time.
Ooh, you better be careful, people listening.
I remember thinking that when Twilight Princess first came out. I haven't played in a while. I'd have to play them back to back. But in any case, Ocarina of Time came out, and I do remember, I'll say this about Ocarina of Time. During the time, it was absolutely my favorite game of all time. And I played through that game 7 times in a row. Loved it that much. No such thing as the perfect game. And again, a lot of this stuff is subjective.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm going to start tearing the graphics apart or anything. It's a Nintendo 64 game. So, it's like, yeah, it's like Link looked blocky. Everything was, a little bit blocky. There's some pre-rendered backgrounds here and there, which was a little odd, honestly. Like Temple of Time, pre-rendered background. Okay, little Resident Evil style going on there. And then you go back into the Castle Town. Actually, I think most of Castle Town was pre-rendered. But anyway, all that to say is the sudden music changes during enemy encounters. And to me, the odd thing about it was it sort of ruined the immersion for me in that, first of all, Koji Kondo is one of the best video game composers out there. And I'm pretty sure he did the music for Ocarina. So many iconic songs in that game. And, it's like you're going throughout let's say the Shadow Temple or something, or the Forest Temple, and you've got this really cool, or the Fire Temple, and you've got this really great music going on, or even just like the Lost Woods, something like that. And you've got this awesome theme music going on, and then a key starts flying toward you, and you hear this basically one measure of not really music per se, but just like a couple of almost like horror music when
Right.
they're doing the violin shrieking thing. Yeah, yeah, to increase
Right.
tension. I'm like, you haven't increased tension. You just ruined the flow of this awesome music. Like you're now making me think about that. So that's me. That might be a little neurotic, so to speak. What do you think about it?
I wouldn't just say neurotic or anything like that. I think that there are games that do it well, and I think there are games that don't do it well. I think there's a way to transition into it, and I think I wish I could tell you a game. I really do. Maybe it doesn't exist. You know, I haven't played all the games. I wish I did, but I feel like there has to be games out there, and if there are, please comment and let us know so that we know. But like it like you said, you want that heightened tension. You want to know that something's not okay, you know, because like you're in the lost woods and it's playing this somber music, like you're lost in the woods. And if an enemy comes out and you're still fighting like this enemy in the lost of the woods, I think that it kind of like changes the dynamic of the battle. It doesn't. I think that battle music is important. I think that the transition is in. I think the transition is important. Like I feel like I played a game. I just can't think of the name where the music's great, and then when the battle music starts, it's just a heightened variation of the music that's already playing. You know, I think that if you switch from something, if you switch from one end of the scale to the other end of the scale, it is jarring, and I think that that is probably their point. But at the same time, it does kind of like take you out of the experience a little bit, you know. But I think that there are games where they just kind of say, "This is where we are," and if once it's battle time, we're just coming here. Like you know that you are still where you are, but you know that there's a change. You know, and it's subtle. You know, like maybe the beat picks up a little bit faster. Maybe they add a few more drums or bass to the music that's already there, so that you're like, okay, I know that. I mean, I know that it's battle time, but I'm not taken out of that. Like I'm just my senses are heightened. I'm not like, oh my God, there's somebody in that area. It's just like I'm walking. Oh, okay. Spider senses are tingling. So then you'll turn around and you'll be like, I hear it, and there's something going on here, but I'll go ahead and maybe I, I have to think about it, but I think that the game has to exist. That does sound familiar to me, where it's playing the music for the area you're in, and in that area, if you get into a battle, then the same music just slightly changes to a little bit more of an upbeat, and you're like, okay, I'm fighting, or like I said, I know something's up, something is amiss, you know.
I can't think of anything like that.
Dude, I feel like that's a weird thing. I feel like I have to go through my library and see what I have. But I feel like there's got to be a game where it's like, you know, it's not an abrupt change. Like they just do a variation of the music that you're already in. And it sounds so familiar. And the reason it sounds familiar because I remember thinking, oh, that's cool. You know, that's the best way to describe it. Like, oh, that's cool. You know, like it isn't like day and night. It's like, you know, it's midday and you know a little bit and then the sun's down a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I said, spider senses are just on. Like even if I don't see the enemy, I know that there is an enemy, you know, and I'm like, okay, let me see what's up. If I find it, man, I'll let you know. But I think if games do it that way, that makes more sense. I'm on your side. Like it shouldn't be day and night. It shouldn't be this abrupt change. And I know that you're trying to like put tension in, but it's more just like it's not even tension. It's just like shock. I don't want to be shocked. I know that there's enemies here. I'm not silly. This is not just some empty dungeon, you know. But this is there's tension. There's something up.
So, for any improvisers or actors in the audience or anybody that's ever taken an acting or an improv class, you probably heard like, got to raise the stakes, got to heighten those stakes type of thing. And to me, what you said about like just have a variation on the music, that's fantastic because you don't ruin the flow as opposed to like you were saying night and day. Now, I think it's different. Like, so like if you're talking about a real-time action game like Zelda, because I'll outright say Zelda's not an RPG. It's not an action RPG. It's an action adventure game. There's
Right.
anytime you have an option in any Ocarina of Time, Zelda going, "Will you help me?" Say no. That's an infinite. She's like, "But will you help me?" No. But will you help me? It's not real fun. Or in Persona 5, I can choose between yes or hell yeah. That's not,
That's not a real option.
yeah. Not that Persona 5 is not an RPG. I'll get hate for that comment.
You do it everything, man. You get everybody upset.
That was the entire goal of this video, is just to piss people off. No, but I guess, well, actually sticking with Zelda, and we've talked, I just have a couple more.
Just a couple more.
That actually goes. Sticking with Zelda, Zelda and Resident Evil 4, and we've actually, both of us, I think we've even mentioned this in podcasts before. Princess Ruto, Ashley in Resident Evil 4. Now, there's always an exception to the non-annoying side character, I think.
Well, it's not even like a side character. It's the escort. It's the escort.
Escort, yeah, the escort.
I'm incapable of doing anything myself. I don't have any common sense. I'm just a dummy walking around, waiting to get taken, waiting to get attacked. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the same situation I'm in. Here's a gun. It's not rocket science. Like we're in danger. Why would you sit there and just wait to be taken? Why would you sit there and wait to be hurt? Dodge, roll. I don't know.
Yeah, as opposed to games that do it really well. And I think games that do it really well connect more on the emotional spectrum. The Last of Us.
Yes.
You'd mentioned God of War several times. So, the new God of War games, that is. So, and I think for me, the Ocarina of Time stands out, just Jabu Jabu's belly with Princess Ruto. She stands out as the most annoying. Partly because of like dropping through the floors and everything. Granted, it's not a super large dungeon at all. If they ever remake Ocarina, I'd play it again. I might even play the original Ocarina again. I'm sure it's on Switch eShop or virtual consoles or whatever. But my last one would be, and this will be subjective, personal taste, whatever, voice acting. There are several examples of phenomenal voice acting in games. The Last of Us, performance capture as well. Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, phenomenal job. The Arkham series with Kevin Conroy, rest in peace. Mark Hamill, Tara Strong as Harley Quinn. Who my cousin, who is a cosplayer, did her podcast during COVID, by the way. Shout out to my cousin. But anyway, some voice acting. Let's see. So Persona 5, loving the voice acting in that game.
Really good.
And by the way, we talked about filler a little bit already. That game has some pretty good filler, and like you got to raise your skills up. And honestly, you might see the same kind of 10-second scene 100 times by the end of the game. Like it's like, oh, you want to study in the cafe? Okay. And then Morgana, the little cat character, is like, hey, can I talk?
Yeah.
You're going to see that a lot if you choose to study, because it's a great way to level your character up. But it only takes, like 5 to 10 seconds or whatever. And the music just flows throughout. So it to me, it never feels like a deterrent, so to speak.
Right. It never feels like a task. It never feels like something you just got to check off the book.
Right. Other phenomenal examples of voice acting in my book, the Mass Effect trilogy, Martin Sheen, Lance Henriksen, Jennifer Hale, Keith David, just amazing voice actors in that game. To me, that's one of the best RPGs of all time, by the way.
Never played it. I need to. Never played it.
Action RPG, absolutely role playing. I mean, you might make a decision. I've never played the first, in fairness, played second and three, at least a couple times both. And you might make a decision in the first, or in the second one anyway, where you might end up romancing this character throughout the rest of the trilogy. Or you might make this person not ever talk to you in the trilogy past that point. I've done both playthroughs, and it's like, yeah, that's actually a thing. That is absolutely game changing there. All right, so we were just talking about voice acting. Might have been a little bit of a weird edit there, but we're back. We were just talking about Mass Effect, and I had brought up silent protagonists. And so, Chris, you don't seem to mind silent protagonists so much. I like it when you can name your character. I like it when you can name your team. Persona 5 lets you do that. Sometimes Zelda, I think it's okay. See, here's the thing: Link is such an iconic character
You
that
can't put you can't put him in the
if
that's just what it is. I mean, like I don't, like you said, you can't put Zelda in, right? But Persona 5, like the main character doesn't talk. I don't know, they did a great job, never bothered me.
he actually, so this is interesting. I call him a silent protagonist, but I believe in one of the opening cutscenes, they're talking about Kimoshida, who's basically kind of the first villain, so to speak, and he's basically a pervy teacher. And I believe that's brought up, and your guy goes, "Pervy teacher." He actually says that in a cutscene. And since that cutscene, I believe so. And since that cutscene, he has not said, other than sort of like Link style chirps, like okay, or Mario style chirps, like okay, here and there, like you might hear him here, or I've got it, or this is it. He'll say stuff like this is it.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's that voice actor standing in the booth or wherever, sitting in their home studio at home going, this is it. That was a line that was recorded, so that's an actual voice. But there seems to be less character to it. Metroid Dread, Samus, she speaks in Chozo during part of the game, which is cool, but most of the game doesn't speak. That was cool and everything. Mario these days, he speaks, but not full on, I believe the most Mario has ever said at a time is "thank you so much for so far as playing my game," or whatever he says at the end of 64. Spoiler alert if you haven't beaten Mario 64.
Man, you're just ruining for everybody.
Yeah, I'm talking about games from like the 90s, right? But yes, so I love good voice acting. I've taken actually a lot of voice acting. I've done paid voice acting, unfortunately, not games. I'm available, Square. On the note, or whoever who makes Mass Effect, BioWare or somebody. Tears of the Kingdom is going to have voice acting again, and I'm sure it's going to be the same where Link will not speak, and that's fine. Now, one thing that I feel is maybe more common in Square games is their voice actors, and this could just be the direction that the voice actors are given, but they seem to speak so slowly and unnaturally. This is something I love about Persona 5 is the characters in that game. Ryuji is one of my favorites whenever something shocks him. When he gets shocked by everything, he goes, "For real?"
He's the best.
But they're teens in high school, and it's like, yeah, this is awesome because it's coming off that way. Whereas I'm playing like the Squaresoft game or Square Enix games, and I'll try out like the Triangle Strategy demo game or something or whatever, and it's like, we must go to the castle at once. Well, what about this other thing that we need to do? It's like very
right.
Not necessarily robotic because like the actors have inflection and everything, but it's just very over dramatic, and there's something slow about it. I think I actually talked about this in my Dragon Quest video where it's like, especially if you're going to display the block of text on the screen along with the dialogue, it's like, I've read that entire paragraph and they're like on their third.
Yeah, they're still going on about whatever.
It's very like fleeting and not regal, but just, I don't know, fleeting, dramatic. And I don't mind over the top voice acting if it's at like a good pace. But if you're speaking like that slowly, Resident Evil games are, an example of something that have gotten so much better over time because they weren't at first.
Jill, watch out for that door. I love it.
I'm the master of unlocking. Jill, you're gonna be I was almost a Jill sandwich.
Great. They were like, this is it. The Sonic Adventure, the first Sonic Adventure, that voice acting was terrible. Terrible.
It's interesting you bring that up because for anybody that hasn't played Sonic Frontiers, found out they do have a demo available now, and I actually tried that out last night. It's at a time limit though; it's only 15 minutes.
I played it. It was decent.
The demo or the game?
Oh, the game. It was like free for PlayStation Network or something like that.
Oh, really? Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I only played it, a little bit, and even the title screen I thought was pretty amusing because I'm like, man, this is Breath of the Wild, but Sonic is in it. I hear it's a lot, shorter. I hear you can beat the game, and correct me if I'm wrong, you played it, but like, is it 20-hour game, 30-hour game?
Something. It's pretty short. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty short.
Yeah, it's not like a super
fun.
Yeah. So I was intrigued by the demo for sure. I'm more inclined to pick up Tears of the Kingdom because that's right around the corner. But yeah, just as far as voice acting, just especially Square, I don't know.
It's hit or miss, and it's usually missed. Like the voice acting for the Final Fantasy VII remake, I had some concerns because obviously these characters had never been voiced before, other than like the acclaimed animated films for Final Fantasy VII. But I thought they did a really great job. I was like, everyone talks the way that I think that they would talk. It works well. It doesn't sound weird. I don't know. I was a fan.
Yeah, I'm thinking about these other Square games too, like Live Alive, which played the demo. Would like to get my hands on the full thing, but kind of the same thing where you got the speech bubbles and it's like they're talking kind of over dramatically.
Live
Alive. Portal 2, that had some pretty phenomenal voice acting, Gladys and whatnot. Have you played Portal? Played the Portal games?
Okay, so I've played it, but it was at a buddy's house, so I didn't really. Okay. I enjoyed what I played, but it was at a buddy's house. I never really owned the game myself,
All right. Well, cool. I think we've covered a lot there. So, there's a lot we can sit and complain about, but there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to. Me personally, this year, I'm actually not looking forward to too many things this year. I am sucked into Persona 5 right now. Absolutely love that game.
So goddamn good.
Tears of the Kingdom is around the corner. I'm pretty sure we know that's going to be a masterpiece. Speaking of Zelda, though, and we were talking about difficulty spikes, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, so this will maybe be my final thought is, yes, that game is my favorite of all time to date. I initially hated Breath of the Wild.
Really? I think we did talk about this. I think that it did took you a while to kind of like jump on the train, which I could understand.
And here's the thing. Part of it was, it's like, well, this is the first time we have a true open world Zelda, and whatever direction I picked, like right away from the start, led me headfirst into a guardian. And I was like, it's Zelda, I'm going to go up to this guy and like destroy him. And then I got like one hit, killed about 10 times in a row. I'm like, this does not compute. This is Zelda.
There's something going on here.
And then the only other time I thought this was with Skyward Sword. So I was concerned because I'm like, everybody except Spot gave Skyward Sword a 10. GameSpot gave it like a 7 or 6.5 or something. And they were the only reviewer at the time I agreed with. People disagree with me on that one. That's fine. But then I had the same initial thought with Breath of the Wild playing it. And it's just because the Guardians or the Lynels or whatever. And it's like, oh, pick a different direction, explore over here for 10 hours. And while you're doing it, you're going to have a lot of fun. And that's exactly what I did. And once I learned, oh, okay, like I have so much other stuff over here to explore that's like more novice-y, or like, there's the Hinox and I can go around him because he's sleeping, just stuff like that. And then ironically, a lot of people complained about the breaking weapons. I actually loved it. So I don't know if I say loved it.
No, I thought it's a great system. It really is. Like everything's durable. Everything's durable.
It forced you to experiment with all the different weapons, and then of course you eventually find the Master Sword and all that.
But even the Master Sword has a durability limit. Like it doesn't ever break. But I mean, like,
so it has to recharge, right?
Yeah, it had to recharge. So right. Like even then, so like I would only use it when I really needed it, and it was like time for master story time. And if not, I was rocking with some other swords. It was great. I loved it. And then the more we're talking about it, I might just do it. I might do another run through.
Are you sure? Because Tears of the Kingdom is right around the corner.
I probably, I don't have
unless
to
you
do a
just do
quick
like,
one.
unless you just do like the Divine Beast and a few.
Yeah, if I just kind of rock it and do what I got to do. I mean, I have to do some temples. I have to do some to kind of get my health up and stamina up. But other than that, yeah, maybe I do
Right.
that run through.
Well, in theory, I mean, you can go straight to Ganon. You don't have to do any of the Divine Beasts, but
I'm not that good. I'm
that.
not. I'm not that good.
All right.
I
Well,
wish I were.
yeah. So Dragon Quest 12 is out this year. I believe it's this year. So that's another one I'm really looking forward to, Dragon Quest 12. And uh I kind of harassed Donkey Kong 64 a little bit there, but I would love a new, how about a new 3D Donkey Kong? That'd be something, because we've had Donkey Kong Returns. I loved Tropical Freeze personally. Liked it a lot better than Returns. It's another one of those where it's like, man, this is a lot harder than the Donkey Kong Country games. But fun stuff. Anything you're looking forward to this year?
Well, as far as this year, I have to look it up. I think it's next year, but they've already like showed the trailer for uh, Star Wars Fallen Jedi 2, which I'm really excited about because it's other than like Knights of the Old Republic, it's been a while since I've played a really good Star Wars game. I mean, don't get me wrong, The Force Unleashed is not a bad game, and I enjoyed it, and blah 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 blah, and it's a fun playthrough. But like the Fallen Order was just like I really enjoyed the story, really enjoyed the characters. It's exactly what I want because it's kind of Dark Soulless. You gotta use your parries, you gotta use your dodges. You just can't go there and spam a whole bunch of text. So there's a little bit of like there's a little bit of story mastery that you need to have. I mean, the Force Unleashed, you can kind of go in there and kind of like mess around and be the guy. But this, I feel like you really have to test your skills a little bit. And as you test them, then you're like kind of want to test yourself. You're like, well, am I, how good am I really? It kind of pushes you to kind of go to the next level. So that's a game that I'm really excited for right now. Obviously, the part two, the Final Fantasy VII remake, but I'm not sure if they dropped a trailer, but I don't know if they put a release date yet. So that's what I'm also looking forward to that. And I think that's about it right now. The Final Fantasy Part Two, and then the Fallen Order Part Two. I'm really excited for those two games.
Star Wars games, Episode 1 Pod Racer, which I think was GameCube. I forgot if that was multi-platform.
I think it was just GameCube. I really do.
The Lego Star Wars games are actually pretty decent. A lot of the
Lego games in general are actually pretty decent.
They actually are, yeah, and often hilarious.
Yeah, obviously the second Breath of the Wild. Excited for that too. Those are the.
And then for anybody that was in the golden era of the 64 generation, little game called Shadows of the Empire - Rendar.
Star Wars. No, that I did not play. This is not ringing.
Oh, really? Oh,
no.
Okay. Interesting. You fight an AT on foot and get a jetpack. At one point, I believe you fight Boba Fett. But man, I had a great time with Shadows of the Empire. Oh, GameCube. There was also, well, Rogue Squadron was 64, and then Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader, and Rogue Leader 2, which was Rogue Squadron 3. I believe we're both on GameCube. I had Rogue Leader, and what's fun about the Star Wars games is the graphics, especially now. Like even in Rogue Leader, I remember them just being fantastic. And it's like, well, if you think about it, most of the ships and everything are already polygonal,
right?
So it's not like they have to worry about like showing this, like this globe or whatever is
right
being super smooth, because everything already has sort of a sharp edge to it, and it's it's like this is made up of polygons. But anyway, yeah, a lot of stuff we could complain about, but more to look forward to.
Honestly.
And so hope everybody is having a great new year. Hope it's off to a great start. Chris, thanks so much for your time again.
No problem, man. I always have a good time. All
right, on that note, we will catch you in the next video. Take care, everybody.